mountains. When it rains for the next time, water flows down the same canal. Thus, river courses and river valleys are formed. Let us learn how the stream turns into a broad river. Transformation of a stream into a broad river. Generally, a river will be in the form of thin streams. It gets bigger and broader when it flows further. It happens so, for the reason that several small streams join it as the stream flows. A stream or river that flows into a main river is referred to as tributary. When the river becomes bigger and broader, the flow of river gets slower. Rivers carry silt, clay, mud, and sand and deposits them on its bed and banks. This leads to the formation of the plains. The river gets slower at the time when it is in close proximity to the sea and is no longer able to carry the silt and sand. It carries them on its own canals, which afterward get filled up. When floodwater flows again to reach the sea, they have to split into new canals. As a result, a river forms a delta when it is close to the sea. The two main deltas are the Godavari and the Krishna rivers. We have two large rivers, the Krishna and the Godavari. These two large rivers flow through the Telugu states, and we also have a large number of rivers that have water only during the rainy season. The Western Ghats receive heavy rains. From there, the rivers like the Krishna and the Godavari begin. Throughout the year, the rainwater slowly gets into the ground and flows into the river. Many of the rivers which start from the dry regions of Rayalaseema, like the Penna, are fed by insufficient rains, and the rivers which start from eastern Ghats receive moderate rains and the water flows rapidly into the sea. That is why they go dry during the non-rainy season and have water only during the rainy season.
Knowledge check.
Let us read about the floodplains and floods. Throughout the year, the river does not have the same amount of water. Generally, in the rainy season, the river may be full, and usually in the summer season, the river may shrink. From some rivers, the trough is very wide and they have high banks. On those banks, the sand and gravel are deposited and are formed as a valley. In the middle of this valley, the river flows as a small stream. No trees are available to the sides of the stream because every year when it rains immensely, this will be filled with water. So there is no chance for trees to grow. This treeless bed is called the floodplain of the river. Generally, all the major rivers have their floodplains. In recent years, floods have become a major problem in our country. Due to the overflow of rainwater, floods will occur during the rainy seasons in some parts of the country. Floods cause severe damage to people, crops, livestock, and property. Let us find out whether there is any role in human beings in these disasters. The vegetation, that is trees, plants, grass, etc., prevents the overflow of rainwater and decreases the flow of speed of the rainwater, and that helps the rainwater to penetrate into the soil. Generally, floods are caused by a sudden increase in the volume of water reaching a river. This can be prevented by vegetation for the reason that it prevents sudden flooding and makes the water to flow slowly into the river. It also helps to increase the amount of water which goes into the soil. On the other hand, vegetation reduces the erosion of soil. Rainwater cuts and carries a lot of topsoil with it. If there is no vegetation, the carried topsoil is deposited on the riverbed, which decreases the depth of the river. As a result, the capacity of the river to bear water will be diminished. The rivers will be flooded even with a little rain and run over their banks, causing severe damage. If the surface of the land is covered with vegetation, then soil erosion can be greatly reduced. Let us note the importance of vegetative cover over the land. The river Ganges and its tributaries originate from the Himalayas. Earlier, there were dense forests. But now, the forest cover in the Himalayas has been reduced very much due to the large-scale cutting down of trees. Therefore, if surplus rainfall occurs in that area, then the water flows down the slopes of the mountains and fills up the floodplain of the river. The water carries a large quantity of silt, clay, mud, and sand and deposits them on the riverbed, and that results in the frequent floods. Floods cause severe damage to people, crops, livestock, and property.
Knowledge check.
Flood, plains, and floods. Let us know about the facing challenges in cyclones and floods. Facing the challenge in cyclones and floods. Regularly, AP encounters extreme critical cyclones for the reason that the state has a long coastline. When heavy winds blow from the sea, heavy rains lash the lands and high waves make the sea very unsafe. Cyclones have a chance to occur in between June and December. One of the worst cyclonic storms in India had occurred in AP in the year 1977 from November 14 to November 20. The worst affected areas were in the Krishna River Delta region. The island of Divisima was hit by a 6-meter high storm surge, killing 9,941 people. Hundreds of bodies were floating in the water, and the bodies that floated beyond recognition were consigned to mass pirates. About 100 people who had left their homes to seek shelter in a church in Bapatla village were killed when the building collapsed. Most lives were lost in Divisima, Krishna district. Recently, in 2014, Hudhud cyclone created a huge destruction in Vishakhapatnam. Human beings have no control over cyclones since they are natural disasters. On the other hand, the impact of these disasters are heightened or lessened due to the way our society is organized and prepared. Let us learn about the cyclones and floods in more detail. For example, when you see people in the vulnerable part of the land, you will find them as the poorest people who live there with the least resources to protect themselves. In the sea coast, there will be numerous huts that belong to the poorest fisher folk and the laborers, and usually the lowlands of the towns and villages which get flooded or occupied by the slums of the poor. The poor people are the one who will be affected the most when the disaster occurs. When the floods or cyclones occur automatically, the floodwater will mix with the drinking water, which gets polluted and is unsafe for drinking. Particularly, the poor people contract several diseases like cholera, dysentery, jaundice, etc. for the reason that they are forced to use polluted water. Only those with resources are able to arrange for safe bottled water to drink. After the occurrence of the cyclone, as roads will be damaged, it is very difficult to help the worst affected areas. Here people are forced to depend on their own resources to save themselves. At the same time, as the instantaneous damage of the cyclones is heavy, such as loss of lives, crops, property, houses, etc., it may also cause permanent damages. For instance, the people who makes money with the animals, vehicles, food grains, etc. are destroyed. To go back to their work, they need to buy all these again. Many families may lose their working members. Daily wage workers face loss of work for several weeks that result in loss of source